So review for finding square roots and cube roots of perfect cubes and squares. So if we look at these first two problems and we're going to find the value. So remember, if we have a number with this little 2 up here, or the exponent of 2, that means you're going to multiply this number, or this base, times itself that number of times. So we're going to do 3 times 3. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. So 3 squared equals 9. Now, if you have a 3 as your exponent, that means you're going to multiply the base times itself 3 times. So it'd be 4 times 4 times 4. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4. Let me get my phone so that we can make sure. So you do 16 times 4 is 64. You could also, depending on what type of phone you have, you can turn your screen and do 4 and then hit that little cubed button right there, x cubed, and it'll give you the answer of 64. So just remember that exponent is just telling you how many times to multiply that number times itself. Okay? The third and fourth example, notice there's a negative there. That always freaks people out. Remember, since this is inside of the parentheses, that's meaning I'm going to have to multiply -4 times -4. So there are 2 -4's multiplying. Well, what is a negative times a negative? It's positive. 4 times 4 is 16. So 16 would be your answer. Notice it's positive. If in a calculator, I know not everybody has access to this calculator, but if you do the same thing on Google or wherever you're doing it, if you do -4 squared like that and you don't include the parentheses, it's going to square the 4 and then take the negative. So make sure, I'll hit enter on that just so you can see, make sure if you're going to use Google or anything like that, you have to put parentheses around the negative so that the answer would end up being the correct sign. Okay, let's do this one. It's -5 times 3, so -5 times -5 times -5. Okay, well let's multiply that out. What's a negative times a negative is a positive. 5 times 5 is 25. Now we have to multiply it again. So what's a positive times a negative? Well, that is a negative. 25 times 5. If you need to, use the calculator. So you would do 25 times -5 is -125. Again, if you're using Google and typing it in, if you put parentheses around it, it would be -125 because we have a negative times a negative is a positive, positive times a negative, or positive 25 times -5 gives you a negative answer. They have to be the same sign, like right here they were the same, that's why 25 was positive, but as soon as you multiply a positive times a negative, it turns negative. So the answer to that one is -125. Okay, last two problems. These ones are the ones that start getting a little bit trickier. So notice these look almost exactly the same. The only difference is this little number right here. We call that an index. So it's the opposite of cubing a number. So if you're going to cube a number, you're multiplying times itself 3 times. If you're going to take, we call it the cube root, so cube root of 64, is you were looking for what number multiplied times itself 3 times. So you can't just say, oh, well, 64 divided by 2 is 32, so 2 and 32. It has to be the same number multiplying times itself. I don't know if this is exactly what your notes look like, but you should have somewhere in your notebook a square roots and cube roots table. And so you can see the cube root of 64 is 4, because if you do 64 divided by 4, you get 16. 16 is 4 times 4, which is also this same problem that we did up here. Notice we did 4 times 4 was 16, 16 times 4 was 64. So the cube root of 64 is 4. If you wanted to, you could just start trying it out. Like I could start with 1. 1 times 1 times 1. Let me do it on my phone, on my calculator, since that's what you guys usually have. So I would do 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. You could go and make your own chart if you forgot yours or don't have it. But there is also a button on the calculator or on your phone. So notice that 3 with the radical. So you have to have the number typed in. So 64, cube root of 64. 64 cube root is 4. All right, now the difference between these two. So this one is what number multiplied times itself 3 times. This one doesn't have a number there. If there is no number there, it's an invisible 2. So you're just looking what number multiplied itself 2 times. So again, you can look at your chart, or 64, and take the square root, which is 8. Or we know it's 8 times 8 gives us 64. So the number that was multiplied times itself was 8. So again, use the calculator, use the chart that you already have in your notebook to find these values.